All right, so we're diving into high output management today.
By Andrew Grove.
Yeah, by Andrew Grove. And, it's interesting.
A classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
And you shared some excerpts from this, and I was fascinated
Yeah.
by a lot of the things that he had to say, especially given, this book was written back in 1983
Right.
when he was running Intel.
Yeah, during a pivotal period for the company, too. It was in that transition from memory chips to microprocessors, so.
And yet so many of his ideas still feel incredibly relevant today.
Absolutely.
Like they transcend the tech industry and just speak to something fundamental about management and productivity.
What's striking to me is that Grove really lays out these kind of universal principles that you can apply to just about any field.
It's not just about, making chips faster.
Right.
It's about how to think about work itself.
Exactly.
And, one of the things that really intrigued me in the excerpts you shared was this analogy of a breakfast factory.
Right.
Which I'll admit at first, I was kind of like,
it's a little unusual.
Yeah, what does making breakfast have to do with managing a software team or writing a book or,
Yeah, well, that's where Grove's genius, I think, comes in. He takes this seemingly mundane example and uses it to illustrate these core principles of production.
Okay.
He breaks down any task, right? Whether it's cooking breakfast or designing a microchip into this production process with inputs, outputs, a flow of activities.
I see.
And by understanding this core structure, you can start to optimize any work for efficiency.
So it's like looking at your work through the lens of a factory manager.
Exactly.
You become hyper-aware of bottlenecks and inefficiencies.
You start to think about how to streamline the process. Where are the points of friction? Where can we improve the flow?
And that leads to some interesting takeaways. Like, Grove is a big proponent of saying no to new work when you're already at capacity.
Oh, absolutely.
Which can be really hard.
He argues that overloading your production line, just like overloading a conveyor belt, it's going to lead to breakdowns and delays.
Have you found that to be true in your own work?
Oh, absolutely. Early in my career, I struggled with that a lot. I wanted to say yes to everything.
Right. You want to be helpful.
Exactly. I wanted to be a team player.
Yeah.
But I learned the hard way that saying yes to too much actually ends up hurting everyone in the long run.
You end up spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly. The quality suffers, the deadlines get missed, and ultimately you burn yourself out.
So how did you learn to say no effectively?
It's a constant process for sure, but I found that being transparent about my workload and offering alternative solutions can be helpful.
Like what kind of alternative solutions?
Well, for instance, if someone asks me to take on a new project and I'm already at capacity, I might suggest delegating it to someone else on the team who has more bandwidth. Or maybe proposing a revised timeline that aligns better with my current commitments.
I like that, offering a revised timeline.
It shows that you're still willing to contribute, but you're also being realistic about what you can handle.
And it sets those clear expectations up front.
Right.
Which I think is something that Grove really emphasizes throughout the book.
Absolutely. Clear communication is key.
Yeah. And it seems like that ties in with his whole concept of leverage.
Yes.
The idea that a manager's output isn't just their own individual work,
but the output of their entire team or organization.
Yeah. And delegation plays a huge role in that.
Right, absolutely. It's a powerful way to multiply your impact.
But it's not just about offloading tasks, right?
No, it's about empowering your team members to take ownership and develop their skills.
I was struck by the example he gives of teaching a course at Intel.
Right.
Even though it wasn't directly part of his, CEO responsibility.
It wasn't in his job description.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he recognized the leverage effect of sharing his knowledge and investing in the development of his employees.
And it goes back to that point about identifying the activities that will have a ripple effect throughout the organization.
Exactly.
Like, what are the things that, if done well, will elevate the performance of the entire team?
Right. It's about thinking beyond your immediate to-do list and focusing on the tasks that will have the greatest impact in the long run.
It's not just about being busy. It's about being strategic.
And that brings us to another key aspect of Grove's philosophy meetings.
Oh, meetings.
I know, right? They have a reputation for being time sucks.
They can be the worst.
But Grove actually sees them as essential tools for getting managerial work done.
Really?
He even compares wasting time in a meeting to stealing company money.
Oh, wow.
Strong words, right?
Yeah.
But it underscores how seriously he takes the need for efficiency.
So it's not about eliminating meetings altogether.
No, it's about making them as productive as possible.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, one of his core principles is having a clear objective for every meeting.
Okay.
What specific outcome do you want to achieve before you even walk into the room?
Make
And he stresses the importance of active participation from all attendees.
Not just sitting there passively listening.
Right. Everyone should be engaged in contributing ideas and working towards solutions.
In my experience, though, sometimes people hold back in meetings, especially when there's a power dynamic at play.
Oh, I've definitely seen that happen. It can be really stifling.
Yeah, like everyone's trying to read the room before they speak up.
Grove calls it the peer group syndrome,
Peer group syndrome.
where people are reluctant to share their true opinions until they sense which way the decision is leaning.
Which can lead to, bad decisions because you're missing out on valuable insights.
Exactly.
So how do you combat that?
Well, Grove advocates for creating a culture of psychological safety, where people feel comfortable expressing dissenting views without fear of reprisal.
Psychological safety, that's a good term.
It means creating an environment where it's okay to disagree, to challenge assumptions, to bring up different perspectives.
And I imagine that takes a lot of effort on the part of the leader to really cultivate that kind of environment.
Absolutely. It requires actively soliciting different viewpoints, acknowledging the value of those perspectives, and ensuring that feedback, even when critical, is delivered constructively and with respect.
So it sounds like Grove wasn't just focused on processes and systems, but also on the human dynamics at play within organizations.
Oh, absolutely. He understood that people are the heart of any successful enterprise.
And that leads us to another interesting concept. He talks about the hybrid organization,
Right, the challenge of balancing centralized control with decentralized autonomy.
which is something that I think a lot of companies struggle with.
Absolutely, especially in today's rapidly changing world where you need to be both efficient and adaptable.
So how does Grove suggest navigating that tension?
Well, he proposes a really interesting solution, dual reporting,
Dual reporting.
where individuals report to both a functional manager and a mission-oriented manager.
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
It can be, but it's essentially about recognizing that people's roles often intersect multiple areas of expertise and responsibility. It's like having two mentors guiding you from different perspectives.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, Grove gives this example of a financial controller at Intel.
Okay.
This controller reports to both the finance department for technical guidance, like, accounting principles and procedures and all that. But they also report to the general manager of their business unit.
Okay.
So they're aligned with the unit's strategic goals.
I see.
It's about recognizing that people's roles often, intersect multiple areas.
Yeah, it's like having a coach who helps you develop your technical skills, but then also having a captain who's like, all right, here's how we're going to win the game.
Exactly. It's about connecting the individual's expertise with the overall objectives of the team or the organization.
And it reminds me in his sports analogy we were talking about earlier.
Oh, right.
That whole idea of, work can be like a competitive sport if you set up the right environment.
Absolutely. And that brings us to his concept of task-relevant maturity.
Okay, yeah. Task-relevant maturity.
This is all about tailoring your management style to the individual.
Because one size doesn't fit all right.
Exactly.
Right.
A highly experienced and motivated employee might thrive with a hands-off approach.
You give them the goal and just let them run with it.
Exactly. But someone who's new to a role or maybe still developing their skills might need more structure and guidance.
Yeah, they need more hand-holding.
Right. And Grove argues that the most effective managers are those who can adapt their style based on the individual's readiness to take on a specific task.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you were either overmanaged or undermanaged?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have at some point,
Yeah, and how did that affect you?
Well, there was this one time early in my career,
Hmm.
I was given this project that was way beyond my capabilities at the time.
Oh, no.
And my manager had a very hands-off approach, just kind of threw me in the deep end.
Sink or swim.
Exactly. And I felt completely lost. It was demoralizing, and ultimately the project suffered.
Because you didn't have that support that you needed.
Exactly what I really needed was someone to provide clear guidance, break down the task into smaller steps, and offer regular feedback.
Yeah, to kind of hold your hand a little bit.
Right, to be that mentor, to guide me through the process.
On the flip side, I've also experienced being micromanaged.
Oh, yeah, that can be just as bad.
It's like you're constantly being second-guessed.
Right. It undermines your confidence, makes it really hard to be creative and take initiative.
It's like you can't breathe.
Exactly. You feel stifled.
And so it seems like finding that sweet spot, that balance between support and autonomy
Yeah.
is really crucial.
Absolutely. And it's not always easy to get it right.
Right.
But Grove provides some good tools for assessing task-relevant maturity, like evaluating an individual's experience, training, and confidence level.
So it's not just about what someone can do,
Yeah,
but also their willingness and motivation to take on a challenge.
exactly. It's about understanding the whole person.
One thing that really resonates with me about Grove's approach is that it's very practical and actionable.
He's not just a theorist, he's a practitioner.
Yeah, he's been in the trenches,
He's faced these challenges himself.
and his insights are based on real-world experience.
Absolutely, and that's what makes his book so valuable. It's not just theory, it's a framework for making better decisions as a manager and creating a more supportive and productive work environment.
And it's not just about managing others.
Right. His insights on motivation and performance, they apply just as much to managing yourself.
Yeah, that's what struck me about his analogy between work and competitive sports.
Right, that work can be just as engaging and motivating.
Yeah, if the rules of the game are clear and you have a way to measure your progress.
Exactly. It's about setting goals, tracking your progress, and getting feedback along the way.
It's like that feeling you get when you hit a personal best in training or, score a winning goal.
That sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, you have that clear sense of progress and achievement.
And feedback is crucial in both domains, right?
Totally. Just like an athlete needs feedback from a coach, an employee needs feedback from a manager to improve.
To course correct, to get better.
And Grove really emphasizes the importance of ongoing feedback.
Not just once a year during performance reviews.
Yeah, it should be a continuous dialogue.
Right. Regular check-ins, informal conversations, even just a quick note of appreciation or a suggestion for improvement.
I think sometimes people are afraid to give feedback.
Oh, I know, especially negative feedback.
Yeah, they don't want to hurt someone's feelings or come across as critical.
But Grove argues that feedback is essential for growth.
And he offers some really good tips on how to deliver it effectively.
Right, like focusing on the behavior, not the person, and offering concrete suggestions for improvement.
And I think the way you deliver feedback is just as important as the content of the feedback.
Absolutely. It's about creating a safe and supportive environment where people feel comfortable receiving feedback and using it to learn and grow.
And speaking of growth, I was really struck by Grove's emphasis on training.
Oh, yeah. He's a huge believer in the power of training.
He even does this cost-benefit analysis to illustrate the return on investment.
He's all about the numbers.
Yeah, he calculates that a manager who spends just 12 hours developing and delivering training to 10 employees can potentially generate 200 additional hours of work output if the training leads to even a 1% improvement in performance.
It's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah, it makes you think twice about, skimping on training.
Right. Training is an investment, not an expense.
But it's not just about formal training programs.
No, it's about creating a culture of continuous learning.
Where everyone is encouraged to, seek out new knowledge and skills.
To be curious, to experiment, to stay ahead of the curve.
I love that phrase, stay ahead of the curve.
Because in today's world, things are changing so rapidly.
Yeah, you got to be constantly learning and adapting.
Or you'll get left behind.
Grove even goes so far as to say that nobody owes you a career.
You own it as a sole proprietor.
Which is a pretty bold statement.
A wake-up call.
Yeah, it's like he's saying you're responsible for your own development.
You can't just sit back and wait for someone to hand you opportunities.
You have to be proactive.
You have to create your own luck.
So it's about taking ownership.
Absolutely owning your career, owning your development, owning your future.
I think that's a powerful message.
And it's more relevant than ever in today's world.
Where job security is, kind of a thing of the past.
Right. The traditional model of, working for one company for your entire career, that's gone.
So you have to be adaptable.
You have to be willing to reinvent yourself.
To embrace change.
And to continuously invest in your skills and knowledge.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's also exciting,
Yeah.
It's a time of unprecedented opportunity.
If you're willing to put in the work.
Exactly. You have to be your own CEO.
Of your career.
Of your life. It's really about understanding the work at a fundamental level,
Yeah. It made me think about his point about the 3 modes of control.
Oh, right. Free market forces, contractual obligations, and cultural values.
Yeah. And I think that last one, cultural values, seems especially relevant today,
Absolutely.
when things are changing so rapidly.
He argues that a strong culture built on shared values and trust can be far more effective than just relying on, rules and regulations.
It's like if everyone's aligned with the mission,
Right.
they're more likely to make good decisions even when there's no explicit rule book to follow.
They feel empowered to do what's right.
It's like that sense of ownership we were talking about.
Exactly.
And I think that's where Grove's insights on building a strong culture are so valuable. you know.
He talks about the importance of clear communication, shared experiences, celebrating successes together,
It's about creating an environment where people feel connected.
to the mission, to each other.
And it's interesting to think about how his book, written back in the 80s,
Right.
still feels so relevant today.
It's timeless in a lot of ways.
Like the specific technologies might have changed.
Yeah.
But the fundamental principles of management and leadership that he outlines are still so applicable.
I think it speaks to his ability to distill complex ideas into these clear, actionable principles.
He doesn't just tell you what to do. He explains why it matters.
And then how it connects to the bigger picture.
You know, I found myself highlighting so many passages in the excerpts you shared.
Yeah, me too.
It's one of those books that you can return to again and again
Absolutely.
and find new insights each time.
It's a classic for a reason.
And it's not just a book for managers either, right?
Right. His insights are valuable for anyone who's trying to achieve their full potential, you know?
Whether you're leading a team, working on a project, even just managing your own career.
Exactly.
And speaking of careers, one of the things that really stuck with me was his emphasis on owning your career.
Nobody owes you a career. You own it as a sole proprietor, he says.
Yeah, and that's a powerful message, especially in today's world.
Where job security is, less and less of a given.
You have to be proactive about your own development.
You have to create your own opportunities.
So it's about taking ownership.
Owning your career, owning your development, owning your future.
And it's about being adaptable, being curious, being willing to step outside of your comfort zone.
Embracing change.
Recognizing that learning is a lifelong journey.
It never ends.
I think Grove would be pretty happy to see how his ideas are still resonating with people today.
Decades later.
Yeah, it's a testament to his vision and his ability to articulate these timeless principles.
And his deep understanding of human nature.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into high output management.
We have.
We've explored Grove's insights on production, leverage, motivation, decision-making, organizational structures, training, feedback culture.
Even the importance of adaptability and continuous learning.
And we've seen how his ideas can be applied to managing teams and projects.
To managing our own careers.
And to navigating this rapidly changing world that we live in.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
I agree. I've learned a lot.
And I hope our listeners have too.
And if you're feeling inspired, we encourage you to, check out the book for yourself.
Delve deeper into Grove's ideas.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions.
What resonated with you? What challenges are you facing in your own work?
Share your insights with us, and let's keep this conversation going.
Because as Grove himself emphasized, learning is a continuous process, and the best insights often come from sharing our experiences with others.
So until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for excellence in all that you do.